Julian, welcome to the Built for Trust podcast. So nice to have you.
Thank you. It's great to see you. Great to be here. We last saw each other at the Grand Conference in New York.
Yeah, I know. And that was actually really good. That was with Phil T. I forget who was with you as well.
We had two
Um,
women on the
yeah,
panel, and I'm forgetting the other dynamic woman's name, but really interesting what she's doing in AI as well.
yeah. Well, I'm glad that I'm not the only one who forgot, her name, so I would feel really bad. So it's like, all right, so misery loves company, as they say.
There were a lot of
Uh,
people and, a lot of but really dynamic people. But of course, it's great to feature women technologists. So thank you for
oh
having
my
me
God.
on.
Oh my God, of course. We, it's a little bit of, I think an odd thing. We try so hard to make sure that, great people have a voice within the community, and so, and we try extra hard with women, and I think, and I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like, for many years in the past, women were never invited to speak. And so they're a little gun shy, not all, of course, and so we
True.
find that we have to put a little extra time, into that. So,
Well,
yeah.
there are hidden figures in every industry. And, I wrote a whole book called Alpha Girls about women succeeding in heavily male fields, including tech and venture capital. So that's a subject that's near and dear to my heart. I know it's not the subject we came here to talk about, but it's still very relevant today. So having allies and advocates and opportunities to showcase the brains and the talent and the different ideas that are brought forth by our different perspectives in life, and that really has come to life with AI, and it's so important in terms of the technology that we bring to the world, and especially with AI at the tip of the spear. It's so critical to have a variety of voices creating the AI.
I'm so with you on that. And, it's a much richer environment, when you have lots of different points of view, and especially male, female, and all of our, ethnic, backgrounds, as well. Um, so great. Thanks for kind of mentioning, that, so anyway, I had the pleasure of meeting you and listening to you. And so I wanted to basically expose you to the broader community. So why don't we first start off a little bit about, you sharing your career path, and where, how you have progressed within the industry and what brought you to found Alfie.
Well, it's a surprising path to many, but so I'll surprise your listeners, and then
Yeah.
there will be a thread that runs throughout that takes
Okay.
us from way back when, little girl me, to today.
Yeah.
In the story is always about a love of words and a love of language, and how our words can help us or harm us, or bring us together or push us apart. So I was a journalist. I was a word geek as a kid, the spelling bee girl, the reading the dictionary at the dinner table, all of that. I went on to become a journalist. I was a journalist at the San Francisco Chronicle for 20 years. It was an
Huh.
amazing job, parachuting in, not literally, but maybe, into all of these different worlds
Figuratively.
of both like uber hyper success and also despair, really
Mm.
across that spectrum of the human condition.
Yeah.
And while I was a journalist, I started writing books. Went on to write 5 nonfiction books. They really all combine the best in the human spirit and the best in new technologies to really
Yeah.
push through, make breakthroughs. So it was my 4th book, Alpha Girls. I'd written a book about Larry Ellison. I spent a year interviewing him.
Mm.
I'd done a book on the private race to space. So interviewed, really focused on this dynamic figure, Peter Diamandis. but interviewed Elon and the whole cast of characters, and they are
Mm.
definitely a cast of characters who
Yeah.
enabled the really private race to space, which is now flourishing. So I wrote a book about that. Again, always combining you have to have so much human bravery to do something
Yeah.
transformative, but then also how do you combine the best in new technology? So it was my fourth book, Alpha Girls, about women succeeding in heavily male industries, where I picked out these four women who are also characters. These are real people. I write only
Yeah.
nonfiction, and told their stories of how do you prevail, the companies that they
Yeah.
helped launch, mentor, fund, and their stories had never been told. And it was during that period where I began to think that I wanted to create something that combined my love of language and words and expertise and the 20 some years I'd spent doing that
Yeah.
with my forever interest and belief in the power of technology. So went out five
Yeah.
years ago, did something totally crazy, that scratches on the napkin, and pitched it and raised our first round. Got some great, world-class investors. Will Hurst, who
Yeah.
was my first boss actually at the
Uh,
newspaper, William Randolph Hearst, Jim Getz of Sequoia, and a really stellar group of early advisors and investors who set us on our way.
yeah.
And so started Alphy is the name of our company, and really to look at how do we mitigate harm in communication, and how do we advance more collaborative communication in real time using our language skills to develop what was then a very different world of AI. 4 years ago it was pre-open
Yeah.
AI, but we began to do this very methodically, and so that's kind of the backstory that brings us up to Alfie today.
Boy, what a great journey.
It has
Really,
been.
like, we are like polar opposites. It's like I never liked words. It's like I was always like, I was always
Really?
fit. Well, yeah, I'm not liking words. I could not spell. I was like so bad. Like I would like almost have a panic attack in third grade when it was time for the spelling bee, because
Oh
they would give me,
no.
okay, well, spell while, and I would flub it, and it's like I was always like, they would line you up, right, like on both,
Yes.
sides of the room, and then okay, you start off the first person on the line. Okay, the teacher will give you a word, you spell it. If you got it right, you stayed. If you're not, you got to do the walk of shame and sit down. I was always doing the walk of shame, to sit
Yeah,
down.
that was
It's
our
like it
form
was,
of the Squid Game, I guess. Something.
yeah, yeah. That was like
So
verbal dodgeball,
yeah, but what did you gravitate to?
engineering,
Engineering. Okay,
yeah, and math,
that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah, but although it's like I write a lot, I've been kind of a column in kind of the computer networking industry. Columnist, it's like I basically write and I speak for a living, is really what I do, so it's like, it was interesting. So I started off, like really being almost like fearful of words, couldn't spell them, I could pronounce them okay, but not spelling them. But then I just, and I was never a really good writer either. But like, I think in the world of business, I just learned how to write for business. I couldn't write what you wrote, so anyway, I think my journey was a little bit different, but we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about you.
Well, but it's interesting, and what you it's amazing what we can become proficient at, and sometimes it's those very weaknesses. Like, for me, it's now leading a company. It is, it's really digging deep into the AI when that is not my background. It is wearing many, many hats as a CEO of a company, and whether it's getting into the hiring, the difficulties of letting people go. So I've gone far away from my original really area of expertise, and so have you. And it's like it's this path that comes about. It's amazing what we can learn. I think so many times along this journey of running this company, it's okay to say I have no idea how to do that. I've learned that it's fine, but I am going to do everything I can to figure it out and to become
Mm.
highly competent at it. It's like you didn't have that expertise and you started developing it. And I'm a big believer in this Japanese principle of Kaizen, where it's assiduous in application. We are incrementally learning every day. We don't, I don't know about you, if your career just all of a sudden leapt forward, but most people, most of us, it's incremental. Like I wrote every day for like 25 years. And
Mm.
so if I
Yeah.
didn't get good at it, there would be a real problem
There'd be
there.
a problem there. Yeah, you shouldn't be doing that.
No, it's like it's
Yeah.
constant in application. But
Yeah.
now, it's rising to these new challenges, and now thinking about AI and how we can apply our expertise with language to this new realm of AI integrations, AI classifiers,
Mm.
AI agents, and really, and again, stay true to our area of specialty, which is language, linguistics, communication, syntax, all of those things that you didn't get the gold stars for.
You really, I so needed your product, so long ago. I really
But
did.
so we think of it like, okay, there's grammar check and there's
Yeah.
spell check, which Nick
Yeah.
uses and needs, I'm sure, still.
All the
But
time. Yeah.
then we
I'm
are
better.
heart
No,
check.
I'm a lot better now. I'm better,
Okay, good.
yeah.
But we
Actually, I
bring,
despise spell check. Go ahead.
do you? Okay.
Yeah,
Because it's
because it's
always,
always like, give me the wrong, like, for example, like alpha or alphy. It's
uh-huh.
always trying to do alpha, you
Yes.
know?
Because it's very
So,
alpha.
yeah, that's true. Boom. Yeah.
Boom.
Like
It is.
male engineers.
Yes, it is very, very alpha. And actually I thought of alpha as a name because the book was Alpha Girls, but I thought alpha's too alpha. And
Yeah.
Alfie is the wise one. Alfie is very friendly and helpful. And that's what we want to be,
Yeah.
even though we, have built this into a communication compliance solution,
Yeah.
that mitigates harm, that detects harm in real time. And so it's gone in that direction, but we're doing good while mitigating harm for companies and for individuals, and in a way that the industry doesn't currently have. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. I saw it, so I went up to the website and it is really cool, so if you haven't, if you're listening, if you haven't seen this, it's like, you could be writing an email and you might be writing something, and especially if you're on the heat of a moment of something, it's like you're having, some, heated exchange, with colleague or whoever, it'll kind of check you, and it's like it'll correct you, and it's like, hey, warning, this might be lawsuit pending thing, it's like, so it's really, and it does it in real time, so it can really looks like it really can save your butt, and especially with, as we saw in the Twitter files, it's like if Twitter would have had, your product, the Twitter files would have been tame. They would have never been like,
Well,
as
true.
disruptive.
And
Yeah.
you think about, like, people say to me often, do people really write and say these things? And we're selling into, again, heavily regulated industries like banks, and including banks. First Banks
Mm.
is our first
Yeah.
vertical. And yes, there are, we detect for off-channel communication. There was something like $1.2 billion in fines levied against companies because their employees in the financial services industry were using
Yeah.
WhatsApp, they were using Telegram, they were using Signal. So we can detect that in real time before it's too late. Same with document tampering. McKinsey was involved with Purdue Pharma, $800
Yeah.
million settlement over their relationship. They were found to have destroyed documents, something called spoliation. So we have a detection for document tampering, document
Mm.
destruction. We created recently a detection system around, which is really exciting, which is around unfair lending,
Yeah.
detecting unfair lending in real time. So for all the loan officers, for all the mortgage lenders, whether at banks, mortgages, community banks, credit unions, huge market potential, huge TAM with that. And then we
Mm.
have all of the isms: racism, ageism, sexism, classism, but discriminatory in the workforce. We are not activist. We
Yeah.
are, we're creating all of our own training that hews to, like, for Unfair Lending, Fair Housing Act, Equal Credit Opportunity Act, Truth in Lending Act. We use our journalistic skills. So that's kind of the thread that goes throughout to build what
Mm.
we've built. We didn't take training off the shelf. We didn't buy it from somewhere else. We've created tens of thousands of our own training text, training sentences.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
been very,
Yeah.
very
Perfect.
methodical.
Well, it's like you were mentioning some of the folks, investors on their board. I know two. I know Jim Getz. I've known him like for a long time. Really great guy.
Yeah.
And then also Andy Brown.
Yes.
As you're
Andy's
speaking all about,
amazing.
it's like totally amazing. Like it's like he's the co-chair of the conference that you spoke at. At the AI Networking Summit. Him and Phil are both kind of co-chairs of it. And as you're speaking, I can hear Andy talk. It's
Really?
like, well, on the compliance side of things, because like he's
Yeah.
lived in that world, his entire career,
Yes.
and so he's built systems, IT
Mhm.
systems, to kind of digitize, the banks. And so he has to know all the compliance, and the regulatory requirements that are there and put those guardrails in place. So anyway, I can, I know two, and they're both like really, great folks, really great professionals, in the industry. So hats off. But I can, especially on this whole compliance piece of it, Andy's really good there.
Yes, and it is. It's a whole new world, and
Mm.
it's one that there's a great opportunity because most of the banks use really outdated AI for
Mm.
compliance. It's lexicon based, it's pattern matching, creates a ton of false positives. So for us to bring AI with much higher accuracy detection rates, we now have over 40 labels with accuracy detections all in the 90th percentile, really
Mm.
attributable to the way we do our training. But to bring modern AI to compliance, my dream is kind of the North Star is, we're able to detect all types of harm, whether it's, we've been doing something kind of on the side for a big networking company that is close to social media, but something around self-harm and detecting that.
Mm.
So we can
Mm.
create detection systems, and it's kind of experimental. It's not our bread and butter, but it is really interesting to do. We just we know how to identify what it is. We know how to define it. We almost have a formula at this point for how to train, how to do the training, tax sentences, how many, when to augment with synthetic training,
Mm.
how to do that, how to, kind of turn the dial on that. So there are lots of the places we'll go, as
Yeah.
the
Great
Dr.
book.
Seuss book has it.
Love Dr. Seuss. Um, a couple of things, so first of all, those are all, they're all really great, and the more kind of guardrails, especially, like on the consumer side, that's one thing. I've always focused on large corporations, but the more guardrails you can provide for corporations. So let's talk maybe a little bit about, what's it like, working with a large regulated entity, and how your system gets implemented. I would think that there's the compliance officers, the risk mitigation, teams, and that there are policies that are put in place, and then you guys can take those policies and actually enforce them. So that's that's how I think about it. But like I might be wrong. I'm just this. I don't.
Well, it's for one thing, it's painfully slow. Like the procurement process is just protracted, slow, but we're progressing. And an example of of harm is we're working with a big bank that had some negative exposure, news stories,
Mm,
lawsuit around discriminating against Armenian Americans. And
mm.
there were texts about it, no more lending to anyone with the last name, IAN or YAN, and where people
Huh.
put these things in
Like
texts.
why
And
the Armenians? What do they do?
yeah,
It's like why pick on them? I'm just like
I know, I
crazy.
know,
It's
I
like
know. So, well,
yeah,
there was, there are always two sides to the story. So, and I always like
yeah,
to learn that, but we want to
yeah,
provide compliance. So there
yeah.
was kind of an interesting backstory to that for another time. But
Mm,
so we set about to really build this first of its kind real time detection for unfair lending,
mm,
and working with the bank, on what we can provide. We can bring something new. Right now, unfair lending is detected after the fact. Redlining. You have to do a lot of analytics around the data. But what if you can get notified in real time? Discrimination in lending, it pops up like what you were referring to. So if I'm typing in something like, oh, your community doesn't typically qualify for loans with us, which was another thing that was said, or your disability puts you at a higher risk of paying back the loan, or we don't feel comfortable lending to undocumented citizens, which would certainly be topical today. And it's something that
Mm-hmm.
credit unions and banks with a lot of rural branches are also grappling with in terms of training their teams on, on what is lawful, what is unlawful, and how to approach such things. So there we
Yeah.
set about, we created this really fantastic real-time classifier. So now it's in testing, and it will be deployed to all of those within the bank who touch lending,
Mm.
specifically mortgages, but potentially also consumer credit under
Uh-huh.
some of the Consumer Credit Protection Act, where we have coverage of that. So
Yeah.
there's an area of harm where the fines were in the 40 million range. The leadership had to go before the Senate Banking Committee and do the mea
Mm.
culpas. There's a lot of harm. There's a
Yeah.
call for that
It's not a
bank to
good
put
day.
better systems in place that are proactive. Working with another bank where there were discriminatory practices by one division against gay employees, which you think
Mm.
couldn't be happening in this day and age. So we already have all of that detection where we can, again, mitigate harm in real time. You can also quarantine things. So if they're particularly egregious things, they just don't, you can hit send, but they will go into quarantine. So a company can set the guardrails around what's acceptable, what's not. Maybe the use of profanity is acceptable. You don't want to quarantine that. You're going to be quarantining lots of emails,
Yeah.
or anger. Anger is something that is missed in tone in chat and email,
Mm.
and you don't know necessarily, how it's going to be received. We've all sent emails that were like, "Oh, I really didn't mean it to come across that way."
Really, I should have waited a day. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
exactly, I should have
Yeah.
waited, or I should have had harm check. So
Yeah.
those are some of the use cases. Right now, we integrate
Harm
with
check is the name of the product, everybody.
yes,
Just FYI.
yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Sure.
So we integrate with Outlook, with
Yeah.
Teams Chat, with Google Suite of products, and we also have APIs, so we can connect to
Mm.
just about any communication medium that
Yeah.
companies have. And then there's a real-time analytics business intelligence dashboard as well, which is kind
Yeah.
of neat, even to see like communication trends over time, or to see if, say,
Mm.
anger is intensifying this week. And you're like, why is that? Oh, gee, we made this announcement. Everybody has to come back to work. People are really angry.
Yeah.
And you can see it on the dashboard. You can see it kind of, trending. So that's
Yeah.
interesting as well. And I think another important thing is that, we're not policing people's words. We are there to keep people out of hot water, to keep myself from saying something, how many times do I have to repeat myself, or something that could, it would be flagged as angry question mark, to give me that
Yeah.
sense of like, pull it back a little bit.
I think what's, the perspective I think that everyone should keep on, it's not about kind of stifling an individual's, speech. It's, we're dealing with like corporations, tens of thousands of employees, and so how do you um, safeguard the corporation?
Right.
And that's really, what you're doing. It's like you're mitigating risk, and you're mitigating brand damage, and being in the news for all the wrong reasons. So I think,
Exactly.
that's really, it's, so it's, I was just thinking, I just hope people aren't thinking about this as a personal tool. It's like, obviously, if you're working at one of those institutions and you're using that tool, it'll assist you, in your email creation. And
Well,
so
and
it's
we
mostly
have,
email today.
yeah, we have consumer, we have some B2C, but we've been focusing on, B2B. and setting up channel sales. But I have, we have a number of people who are using it just as individuals and, and gig workers and freelancers, and find it very effective, especially for the tone aspect. People
So
who are not going to say, well, actually, we've had a few surprises. You assume that people know not to say something about the woman's going to have probably leave us when she has a baby, but there are people who
we'll say that,
who
yeah,
say these things, and if they
yeah,
want to say these things, just don't say it on on company technology. And even your own technology can be subpoenaed as it relates to work. So I
yeah.
just advise, like, it's an aid to help you stay out of hot water, and it's an aid to help your company reduce the cost and toll of litigation, reduce the turnover. It's better culture as well. um,
Yeah, and all right. So you just made me think about this experience I just had.
oh, do tell.
So for B2C, so I had bought this little. I'm kind of an espresso aficionado. I have a La Maroca, cappuccino machine. So I bought this little accessory from this company in Hong Kong, and they sent the wrong one. So anyway, so I like 10 minutes, but it was my fault. It's like I said, I ordered the wrong one. So anyway, so I emailed them as soon as I placed the order, like about 15 minutes later, and just said, okay, listen, hey, I ordered the wrong one. Send product B versus like product A, and so I don't get a response from them. And then they ship it, and I was like, dude, man, I asked you, kind of like, don't, please don't send that product. And they're saying, oh, really sorry, but that it took them 10 days to kind of respond. And I had to go up to their website into a chat. And so it was, I thought, okay, well, and actually I asked ChatGPT, what's the best way to communicate with this company? So Chat said, hey, go to their website and they have a chat
That's
bot.
clever.
Use the chat bot. So I use the chat bot. I kind of like, I put in my emails there. 3 days later, I get a response. I kind of, figured that, okay, this isn't really going to work out. They're not going to allow me to return it. Let me dispute it on American Express, and then that will get their attention, and then we'll be able to kind of maybe deal with this. So anyway, in between that time frame, so sorry for this long story, but in between that time frame, someone does respond to the chat. They send me, kind of the new product. They didn't ask for me to return the other one, so it was really nice, you know. And then I'm done. Okay, I'll eliminate the dispute once I get the product. So I get the product, and so the next day I get a text from them, and and in the text they're calling me a liar, and all of these,
Really?
yeah, all of these like terrible things, on a corporate chat, bot.
Was it
And
a
I'm like,
chatbot that was calling you a liar?
yeah, it was a chat service, so it wasn't an automated bot, but it was like someone was actually responding to it,
Wow.
And I'm like, oh man, I'm like, dude, man, calm down, but that's brand reputation
Yeah.
damage, and that's you.
That's terrible.
Yeah, that was that it's like not like woe is me, like it's like it was like $100 device. It was a big thing,
But
but
it's woe is them.
yeah, it's more like woe is them. It's like too
Yeah.
bad. It's like so I eliminated the dispute, on American Express, for them. But anyway, I was just thinking through this. It's like, oh my god, they should be using your product. They really should
They
be.
should. Maybe you can make it a non-chatbot intro.
Yeah. Well, they started off really good. They
I
would
don't
say,
want them
"Hello,
to call us
friend,"
liars or something.
Yeah, if I remember, I'll send you screen shots of the
I would
of the
love to see
exchange.
that, actually. I
Yeah,
mean, but that's
right.
where, the AI and the AI agents, agentic AI being the buzzword of today,
Mm.
that's where there are clear indications, enough anecdotes to become uh, convincing that it's not there yet to be fully autonomous.
Oh,
A lot of the agents and certainly the bots. I think we'll get there with the agents, but we have a ways to go. Like even just that tone that you're talking about, tone detection, having the guardrails in.
Yeah, well, especially for like customer facing, but like what we were mostly talking about was like internal communications, right? And that was kind of like their policy towards the community that they're serving, and how for one reason or another, like if you're in this really large organization, you got like 10, 20,000 people reporting to you, and you're sitting somewhere and maybe in, Des Moines, and you don't know what's going on in Ohio, or like in some other local community, and so this is a really great tool to be able to, um, like I said, safeguards is a really key word, I think, with your product and what you're doing, and to just make sure that your corporation is protected and that your brand is protected, is really, I think, the bottom line.
And there are
So then,
interesting use cases, yeah, that come up. Like we were talking with another bank last week and about our fair lending classifier, but we were also asked, can you analyze the stored data, which we can, our, under SEC 17A4, financial service firms have to store their data for up to 7 years. So we can use our classifiers to really look and provide
hmm,
granular detail into what's in there. As Andy Brown likes to say, where are the grenades with the pins already out? Which I think is
yes,
a good description. But also, we were asked, can you analyze, this touches on what you were just talking about, the complaint logs.
hmm,
So, can you do, so we could have real feedback on like, how we're responding to the incoming complaints.
hmm, yeah,
And a lot of those are audio, but some are through, through these different communication mediums. Like audio, we can do that's already been translated to text. So lots of interesting applications for it, in
how,
better understanding for businesses, culling through mass amounts of data. Like this company you're talking about should have something like that to understand what went wrong. Because on the human side, things went right for
yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah, it was all going in the right direction until it wasn't.
Until that sounds like the first sentence of some sort of great novel. It was all going in the right direction until it wasn't. Who said you
it,
can't write?
it turned really quick.
Oh, that's
All right, so we don't have that much. We have a few more minutes, but I think I want to, and I'm not sure if you're comfortable with this topic, but it seems like the contact center business is also like a potentially really good kind of use case or area, for your company, because like all those conversations, like you think about American Express, whenever you interact with American Express, everything is recorded. So they have so much data on what is so much data between kind of the consumer, and the brand, and every corporation, has that. And it seems like that's a really great place. And I guess I'm building upon my experience. That's a really great place where you can provide some really good guidelines, and how customer service can be better. But they're going to move
Mhm.
towards, AI agents, as we know, and so kind of have kind of human elimination, in the agent side of that. So I don't know if you have a
They have
perspective or if you've been
what?
working.
Sorry, I missed part of what you said. They have human what in the AI agents?
Yeah, so they're looking, the contact centers are looking for how do we reduce the number of agents we have. These are actually people with headsets and
All
interacting with
right, those type
customers.
of agent, those type of
Yeah,
old-fashioned agents.
yeah, the old agents, yeah, and replace them with AI agents. So
Right.
kind of have an agentic AI service there. So I'm not sure if you've been because you guys are right in that alley, because you have this really great experience with kind of human to human speech and communications.
Right. So we don't make agents, but we make AI that can make agents more successful.
Mm,
So really providing the training around, harmful, unlawful, unethical, the guardrails in terms of what goes in to a
mm,
system and then what comes out. So you send us your text and we send you a classification,
mm,
and it can't hallucinate, it can't go off the rails. It can only give you the answers that we've methodically, painstakingly trained it on. So
mm,
it's safe, it's accurate. We know what the responses are going to be in all categories of harm. So if it's if it's anger, if it's discrimination,
Mm.
or on the flip side, we've also built detection for empathetic language, confident language. So there
Mm.
is that flip side as well. I know that like call center people who work in call centers, there's high turnover. They're besieged. They're under attack all the time, and
Mm.
so they're actually we've looked into, so like the fourth rough call, like you're working in an airlines and it's a day of blizzards across the Midwest, and you're just getting one unhappy call after the other. And then
Oh,
at what point can you inject an agent with the agent to help the agent? You're showing a lot of empathy, you're showing a lot of calmness under fire,
mm.
and
Yeah.
kind of be there
Mm.
as that ally. So there are all sorts of exciting, applications for it that you're touching on. And even
Yeah.
like the complaint logs, that's really intriguing. So part of, my job as the CEO is to look at, we're a small but mighty team, and
Mm.
where do you have the resources, specialize in this vertical first before we go into all these other areas where we can, like, think about the value of detecting self-harm on social media channels. Like that's over there. We're not doing
Mm.
that because of the bandwidth. Think of, customer service representatives, complaint logs. Um,
Yeah.
the applications are great. So it's a matter of how fast we can run and where we can get traction, as a startup,
Yeah.
we're four
I think.
years in,
Mm.
really 3 years in terms of building this AI. And what
Mm.
we've done and what I see happening in the industry, which is really interesting, I think for all of us, you referenced ChatGPT, we're moving away from this generalized AI that is really good for everyone, but great for no one, to very specialized,
Mm.
verticalized AI, where,
Yeah.
we've dug deep into what is the AI needed for compliance for financial services.
Yeah.
And how do we own that? In our training, become so myopically focused, so methodical in our research and our focus on that. And then we can go into other heavily regulated industries. We can go into government, we can go into education. Within loans, we recently found some traction, interestingly enough, in car dealerships. They're as heavily regulated as the banks are.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
it's really, it's like such a challenging job. I thought writing books was hard, but
Well, that
doing
is
this
hard.
was like, whoa. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's like, it's better not to know what you're getting into when you embark on an endeavor that you have no idea how
Mm.
ambitious it is and how the odds are stacked against you,
Yeah.
in this journey of getting a startup to not just survive, but thrive.
Yeah. Well, it's the journey is what it's all about.
You're right.
It's
Yeah.
dealing with the ups and the downs of every day, solving problems. And you've been doing a great job with it. It's like you got a great product.
Thank
So
you.
we have a few minutes. I want to get like your take on this. Like, where do you think this is kind of all going? But there's before you answer that one. So one thing we know that this year, kind of all the LLMs have consumed all the data that's out there, right? So it's like they've kind of consumed everything that's been written, in human history.
Hmm.
Um, the next major space is like within corporations. How do they consume all that data? That's not public data. That's all private data, and therein lies a big play for you guys somehow, some way, right? Because it's like we're going to start to like really corporations are going to start to like have their data ingested into like um, into these AI models one way or the other, whether they're going to build them their own or whether they're
Hmm.
going to like buy them, through cloud providers or what have you. So, and there's multiple different purposes for that, but like one is the area that you've really specialized in, and that is communications, and not just communications like within, but also communications of the brand outward, which is really kind of fascinating too, because you can now just take you could really mold and shape a brand's reputation, and assure it with enforcements that you guys have. You know, so
Mhm.
so maybe that kind of guides us a little bit to like where do you think this kind of goes in the next few years? You know, if we think out just 3 to 5 years, these are going to be pretty exciting years. But
I
so
think
what's your
so
take?
too. I think it has to become very practical and useful for us and trustworthy. Those are the most important things. So moving away from, can you make a wrap for my son's 18th birthday or something? And you're like, wow, this is so great, but let's make
Yeah,
something. And who's to say that's not useful? But
that's useful. Yeah.
to really move into practical AI, and you touched on this, we have consumed all of the large language models, have consumed some of the same resources. What when Twitter was Twitter, or even early days of X, before Elon closed it off to
Mm,
mining that data. But there's Reddit, there's Wikipedia, used a
mm,
lot of the same resources and vacuumed up all of that data. And then we
mm,
know that the data just if you're using that data to generate more data without human intervention, we know it
mm,
gets degraded with each step in the process, and that's when it begins to hallucinate. We also know that there are errors baked in, there's bias baked in. Those are limited, even though they're massive amounts of data. um, there are problems inherent within that. So high quality data is the goal of our future, and
mm,
generating that and being able to classify stored data. But I think, in terms of like what we do is very human centric, and still people have this perception that you can get Gen AI to do all of the training for a classifier that can detect whatever it is. And it will do probably, get there about 50% accuracy, 60
mm,
maybe. But to really have high quality, accurate, reliable AI, it's very human intensive. And having folks who specialize in whatever practical AI is being created is really important. When we do synthetic training, we see like the first 100 rows, let's say, of training text it may give us based on very curated prompts. Maybe they look
mm.
good. You're like, ooh, it's gotten better, or we've gotten
Yeah.
better at the fine tuning. And then you get down a few more lines and more, and it's just repeating. It repeats the same syntax. It uses words so frequently that the AI will begin over labeling, like
Um,
tonight, when we were working on self harm, not to be really dark here, but a lot of it kept trying to train us on this will happen tonight. I will take these pills tonight. I will. So
okay.
then the AI begins to think that tonight is the problem. But if I say, "Oh, I'm going to meet you tonight," let's meet tonight for to go over the plan for the conference, then
Yeah.
it is over labeled and overtrained, so it easily gets degraded. So the human centric element of it is still very important. Um, I love the idea of a personal agent, who can help me with things.
Mm,
I wouldn't trust it right now. Like, I don't know if you would. Like, let's say, I'm going to Michigan to see my son who's in college, and I need my agent to help me. That
yeah.
agent would need to know, my TSA number, my date of birth, my family
Yeah.
members, where they are, my credit cards,
Yeah.
my travel preferences. And I wouldn't quite be ready to hand over all of that information. Would you?
Yeah. It's I use a couple of the tools. I use Grok a lot now. I do use chat. I use Gemini, um,
Hmm.
and the Anthropic product. I forget the name of it right now, but I said this last 2 weeks, on chat in particular, I've used it very differently than I've used it before. Where first I would like, so it's composing, an imitation. And so, I would like kind of give it instructions, see what it would do, and now there's like a separate window, and you can start dialoguing with. There's like, no, you should really change that. Let's look up this. Let's inject that into that. So that's like a much more dynamic. So I can see that. But you're talking about security and personal
Hmm.
security,
Hmm.
data.
And all the PII, right?
Yeah, so what I have done, which took me a little bit of time, is I've uploaded blood tests, and had okay, give me an assessment,
Oh,
you
fascinating.
know, yeah, of these blood test results, and it does a really good job.
Huh.
It's like I wouldn't trust it over my doctor, but it'll do a really good job. And then if you import, upload like maybe two or three, compare that. Is there a trend that you see, in this?
Oh,
So,
I think that's
and
a great
then
idea. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I think that's an intriguing idea. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, it works really good, but I think that's how I'm trying to answer your question. It's like that's pretty personal data,
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
I really don't care if my blood work got was all of a sudden public, but it's like, but my TSA number, I don't know, my travel preferences, I might be okay, with that. Definitely not my social security number,
No. Social Security,
so
date of birth, all those things that are required. I mean,
yeah.
blood, I think it's really interesting. I do think it's a great collaborator. And that's how
Hmm.
I look at generalized Gen AI right now is, it's phenomenal at certain things. Like, I think
Yeah.
it's great at, marketing plans, um, blogs, as someone who loves to write, I don't like to say that, but,
Well, yeah, yeah. Somehow, again,
but
I
it
we're a little bit
is.
opposite there.
And
Somehow.
things you can automate. You still have to be involved. Like, you're not going to
Yeah.
we are not just going, because we're journalists, at heart, so we're not just going to take that statistic without checking it, or we're not going to do our own revisions, but it does a really good, phenomenal job to save you time, to move things forward as a collaborator, which
Yeah.
is what
I
you're
totally.
looking for. You're not looking at, the blood types analysis for the final word, or prescriptive about, what you should do over what your doctor says, but it's an added layer of pretty impressive information.
Yeah. Another look. For
Hmm.
sure. Julian, I think we're kind of coming to the
Oh
close.
no, it's so
This
fun.
was so much fun. I really had such a great time. Talking with you.
I
I'm
did too.
fascinated by Alfie.
Thank you.
And
Thank you. It is, and
congratulations.
it is really interesting. We get, you're in the midst of it, and all the stresses and all the pressures, but when I do step back, it's really interesting what we're doing, and it feels very worthwhile. Like, we're creating something that is good
Hmm.
for the world, and we all want to contribute in some way, right? As
Yeah.
doing good. Um, Not doing harm. And for me, it's always been about, about words.
Yeah.
Now we're looking for different types of gold stars.
Just don't invite me to a spelling test. That's all.
Exactly.
All right. All right, Julian. Again, thanks so much. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you
And
for having me. It was a really fun conversation.